So, in this presentation, I will be discussing on the topic of provision of construction joint in RC frame structure. Now, we will see the construction joint at the column beam junction of the frame structure. As we know that the beam column junction is the crucial zone in the RC movement resisting frames, because it is subjected to large forces during severe ground shaking that happens during earthquake motion. The basic purpose of providing the joints is to avoid cracks in the structure. Suppose a day's work is getting completed and we need to continue concreting the very next day, we need a joint where the work can stop and commence the very next day. These are planned to be located in the region of minimum bending moment. Now, we see the construction joint in case of the footing. The first figure what I am providing is the do not. You can see over here, this is a slope type of footing. This is not a paired footing, this is a slope footing. So, what the mason or the people on the ground while doing the concreting, they do to stop the work, they carry out the concreting over up to this portion. And the very next day, they continue putting the concrete from this level to the upper level. This should be squarely avoided. This is not the recommended practice. We have to understand the basic theory behind the design of the slope footing, and we have to ensure this portion as well as this sloping portion is cast monolithically, so that they behave as a single unit. One kicker or the starter also we can give, but this is optional. We can very well put the starter the very next day. Again, similar thing, we can see this is a pedestal type of footing. So, people not understanding the concept behind the pedestal, what they do, they can stop the concreting over here and again start doing the concreting the pedestal along with the column. This is not the recommended one. We have to ensure the integrity of the footing. So, this case what we have to do, we have to ensure whenever the concreting is stopped, it should be stopping for the whole portion of the footing. And the next day or the next future date, the columns can be started from this location. This integrity of the footing has to be maintained at any cost, otherwise our structure would be failing prematurely. Now, construction joints in the column, I am just showing what the generally people do at the side. In the first case, you can see now the concrete is being done from the bottom to the top, and at location people just give this kind of slope and leave the concreting. On the next day, they carry out the concreting further. This is not a recommended option. Second, coming to another option, what people do, they generally just give a horizontal gap like this, and this top surface is full of lightens, and generally the people smoothen it as well. This should not be done. This is also very not recommended option. We will see what best we can do. This is another thing people do, which is also again not recommended. What people do, they just leave this kind of gap in the column, and they think that this will provide a key for the next leaf that is going to put up the next future concreting date. But this is also as well not a very recommended option. What we should be better doing, we should be leaving this joint in a horizontal manner. At the same time, we have to ensure the surface is very rough and free of any lightens. What best we can do, if we can provide some key over here by putting a wooden sort of thing, so that a key is also made, that is also accepted. But we should not be following the prior three option what I shown to you. Now, the construction joint in case of the slab, I will be showing the different scenario first where the people do the mistake. Here we can see now the concreting is being done, this arrow shows the concreting is getting carried from the left side to the right direction. So, after coming here, people generally what think, they give just this kind of slanting portion and leave the concreting, thinking that the next day when the concreting start, the slab will get integrated with the original structure, but this is not to be done on the side. Second option, what the people do, they generally leave up to concreting up to this, and the very next day they start doing the concreting of the beam along with the next portion of the slab. Again, this is not a recommended option. Third, again we can see how the people are doing the concreting up to this place, leaving this joint, and they start afresh for the next slab the very next day or the next future date. These three options needs to be disregarded and never to be followed in the ground, because it is not meeting the structural requirement. What we should be better doing, that we can do is we can cast up to half of this beam over here and continue this slab from here to this end. The second option is the best option and needs to be followed. what we can do, that we can continue the concreting up to a length nearly 1/3 to 1/4 of the span. Basically, at this length, the forces or the stresses in the span are the lesser or the minimum in this span, 1/3 to 1/4 of the span. So, it always should be our endeavor to keep the construction joint in case of the slab at to this point only, and this portion can be slanted, so that the next day the concreting can start. Now, coming to the typical RC column and beam frame joint. Here we can see in the first figure where I have marked the do not, the two grades of concrete has been specified, one grade M20 for the column and M15 for the beams. So, while doing the concreting from the bottom side from the column and going up, what the people in general do, they give just a joint on the top of the column, and they leave the portion of the beam and top of the column to be done in the very next day or the next future date of concreting. So, basically we are doing the wrong, because we have to give the integrity to this junction. So, we should not be following this criteria. Now, coming to the do part, which should actually be following on the ground, that we have to maintain the integrity of the joint. So, for that purpose we have to ensure, so whatever higher grade of concrete is given, that should be continued inside the beam for at least a distance of 300 millimeter. Now, we can see how the construction joint has been given. On the left side 300 mm, on the right side 300 mm, and after that only L type or a stagger type of joint has been given, beyond which the concreting can start the very next day. So, this will ensure the proper bonding between the previous concrete and the new concrete. Now, coming to the third figure, you can see when the concreting has been done from the bottom and spread to the both sides, we can give a slanting joint at a distance of 300 mm distance, but this is only done when cases of immediate concreting is done. Suppose for a day we are doing and we are stopping the concreting and it is expected to restart the work after 1 hour, we can do this kind of jointing. So, this is correct for only that purpose. Now, various type of mistake what the people do on the side, I am just showing. You can see the do nots. In the first figure you can see the joint has been given at the junction itself, which should not be done. We should be always avoiding this kind of scenario. Now, coming to the second figure, also we can see the joint has been given in a slanting manner at the face of the column, actually affecting the integrity of the joint. Now, coming to the third figure, we can see when the concreting has been done from bottom and left side, how the slanting construction joint has been given on the left side. This is also needs to be avoided at any cost, as it is affecting the strength of the joint. Now, coming to the fourth figure, we can see at the junction itself the construction joint has been given. This should also be avoided on ground. On the fifth figure, we can see how the construction joint has been given on the top of the column. This is not the correct methodology of giving a joint. So, I will be showing what all we should be following on ground. Now, these are the recommended option of giving a construction joint at the junction. The first figure, we can see the first joint we should be providing at a distance of at least 1/3 to 1/4 of the span, as we used to do in case of the slab. So, at this point, why we need to provide the construction joint? Because at this moment the stresses are less in the beam. So, this is the correct method of providing a construction joint at the junction. In the second option, also we can see when the concreting is being carried out from the bottom to the top, we can give at the top of the bottom column at a distance 50 to 75 mm below the soffit of the beam. So, hereafter the next day we can start the concreting. Third option, that is a different scenario when the depth of the beam on the left side and the right side are different. So, in this case we have to ensure that the construction joint is given below 50 to 70 mm below the lower soffit of the beam. Fourth case, we can give a joint like this at the top of the column and we can continue the very next day the concreting on the column. In the fifth case, generally it is avoided, but at times with this criteria what has been written here is can be permitted only when the shear resistance of the concrete is neglected and adequate development length of the protruding reinforcing bar is given. Then only we can follow this kind of recommendation. Thank you.